When you receive news, do you receive it as it's presented to you, or do you dig into it to see what's really going on? Let's talk about it. And I'm not trying to say anyone is 100% the bad guy, but I'm trying to get your mind to think. I want your mind to think critically, and I want you to get past talking points. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of my videos. Here we are back at it again. First and foremost, I just wanted to address the absences here and I guess apologize. I didn't mean to be off for, 2 or 3 weeks, but I ended up having like a week and a half, if not 2-week vacation. And so by the time I was on that vacation, still spending time with family, and then after that had to come back and try to recover, try to unpack. Is just, there was a lot going on. I just didn't have time to come back to video. So unfortunately, videos had to be postponed till now. So with that being said, I also do want to address this, which is because of the recent technical difficulties I've experienced or hiccups my editor has experienced, the vacations I've taken, with it being the month of summer, even though summer's coming towards an end, for the time being, I'm just going to shift focus and not necessarily emphasize, or rather prioritize, putting out a video every single week. Now, that being said, if I can put out a video every single week, then great, I'll do it. But it's not a guarantee, okay? So I just at least wanted to get that to you guys so you can at least be aware that it could be a possibility to continue doing videos every week. But on top of that, like I said, with how things have been lately, I'm not going to stress myself over it if it's just easier to postpone. So that being said, you now have your explanation beforehand if the videos don't come out, okay? With that being said, getting into the video here, I wanted to talk a little bit about a topic that I covered somewhat briefly in a previous video, except I wanted to go into it in a different manner this time, or rather in a little bit different direction. And that is, if you could tell from my intro, when we receive news, do we receive, or rather accept, what people bring us in the way that they present it? Or do we take what they give us and do we dissect and rather dig into the truth and the background story of things to figure out what's really going on? And the reason I say this is because obviously with all the content I make in these videos, I've made it very apparent, and I know all of us are already aware that the world is full of liars, okay? That between the news media, between social media, between selfish politicians, you have a lot of, even our social networks, you see lies all the time, but especially in the conversation of politics, you see it very abundant. And so that being said, what oftentimes happens, as we often discuss, is you have stories or talking points that are brought forth that aren't necessarily completely true, if I had proper grammar there for that, but they have part of the story true, and then part of it is not true, or part of it is exaggerated, or part of it is just a straight up lie, whatever it may be. And so it leaves us, or rather puts us in a place where when we receive these news stories, or when we receive this information, we have to take it upon ourselves to dig into these stories, dig into this information, and find out what's really going on. And it's sad and unfortunate that we have to do this, because really it leaves us in a place where, again, it makes us feel like we are being manipulated, or like we're being used as pawns. Because rather than wanting to bring us what the true story is, a lot of people bring what they want to be true, even if it's 70% true or 90% true, but has a little sliver of something that they added in there. Why? Because it helps push their agenda. It helps motivate, or rather it provides progress to what they're trying to reach towards. And it's sad that we live in a world or reality that's like that, but nevertheless, that's where we are. And so we have to deal with it. And so we have to take it upon ourselves to not be gullible and just receive things as people present it, because people can dress things up in any way they want to. Rather, we have to take it upon ourselves to dig into these stories and figure out what's really going on, okay? And so for real quick, to paint kind of a clear example of what I mean by this is, obviously we know we have the conversation of, we have the circumstance that is what, as people classify the war with Iran, or Iranian people, so forth. We have the so-called war going on. And while yes, there is conflict as such, while yes, there is bombing and such going on, I want to slip a little bit away from that and more so reflect on the impression that people have towards not just Iran, but neighboring places, including more particularly Palestine. And the reason I want to get into this, again, I know we have a so-called war going on, as people would say, with Iran, but the reason I want to focus on the Palestinian part is because when it comes to the conversation people have between Palestine versus Israel, it very much so paints a clear picture that people just receive talking points and don't dig into things. So I'm not trying to sound like a broken or scratched record by repeating previous points, because again, I'll leave a card here. We talked about this in my video slightly. We talked about digging into things in my previous video that I'll leave a tag here, where we talked about opening the envelope and looking in the envelope before we just pass the envelope off. But adding on to that, or rather taking that into a more specific direction, when it comes to the conversation of Israel versus Palestine, I know we're dealing with a war in Iran and so forth. And, people have their opinions of different, not just Iran, not just even Palestine. People have their different opinions about, Nigeria and all these different foreign nations. And more specifically, what our stance is as America, what President Donald Trump is doing. But specifically with Israel and Palestine, while we are in a war, as they say, with Iran, specifically focusing on Palestine and rather the conflict between Israel and Palestine, it's not necessarily something that 100% directly involves us. Yet, as much of a small town that I live in, the amount of people that I've seen standing around corners holding up signs, trying to speak up for Palestine, somewhat baffles me. And I'm sure many of you have seen your protesters, speaking up for Palestine. You see it all over social media, all over Facebook and so forth. And part of what provoked this is I felt the Lord kind of direct me towards this when I watched a video on Facebook. And I'm not going to mention names, but there was a certain someone who expressed their opinion on this, where you could just tell the direction they were coming from of saying, I'm trying to remember the exact words they used. They basically painted a picture like they were listening to a lot of their friends who have disagreeing opinions on that conversation, saying things where they made it sound like their friends were calling all Palestinians terrorists and made it seem like they're 100% the bad guy and Israel's 100% innocent, and that they're all terrorists, and that person just couldn't come to an agreement anymore with their friends, and so they decided to cut their friends off. And again, I don't really 100% understand or agree with the concept of cutting off people that you don't agree with politically. It just sounds intolerant. But I digress, that's beside the point. The more point I'm getting towards is you could even hear in the conversation that this person was having, as it was in a podcast type environment, that their wording was they portrayed as if they're all terrorists, or they're all this, or they're all bad. I forget the other words that the person used, but it sounded like a story was being exaggerated. And I'm going to speak from personal experience, I guarantee you, of the people that I've heard, because I've heard both stories. Again, I see the protesters in my own very, very small hometown. And with all the conversations I see on Facebook, on different social media platforms, I have never seen someone who was on the Israel side saying that 100, at least I myself have never seen someone give such extreme opinions. So it just came across to me as, to some degree, an exaggerated point. But this is exactly what I'm saying, is people hear certain talking points. Why? Because it's aligns with their disagreement of the president. It aligns with their motivations of their political party. It further pushes the progress of where their political party is trying to move towards, or it better lifts them up to make their political party or their own sense of morality seem like the superior one. And you have these talking points that people just run with, and they take it and they agree with it because it aligns with their bias, it aligns with their agenda. And instead of digging into things, they just take things, or again, like the video talking about not opening the envelope, people just take these points and just run with it to the point to where they form such strong opinions. And these opinions that they form, when you really dig into it and get down to the deep layers, really comes from a sense of ignorance. And people don't really realize, how would I say this, how much of a wrong stance they might be taking. Now, with that being said, I'm not saying that it's wrong to want justice for Palestine. But what I'm trying to say in a very neutral stance is that sometimes people think, this is maybe controversial to say or maybe dangerous to say, but I'm going to say it anyways, because a lot of these people that hold these opinions are also the same type of people that, if I could say this on social media, are the same type of people that will push the picture, oh, if you're in a disagreement with this, or if you're this political affiliation, then you're the same thing as a Nazi, you know, or you're this kind of person, you're that kind of person, you're racist or whatever. And they'll use this lingo, and so many times people want to push, oh, you're like a Nazi, you're like a Nazi, you're like a Nazi. But then they're the same people that preach and protest and act like they hate Israel, when hating Israel and wanting Israel exterminated was the very same motivation of the actual Nazis. But I'll get back to that point in a little bit. But they harbor such hate towards Israel. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong to want justice for a nation, but what I'm getting at, again, speaking of the emotions people are driven with, or rather provoked by, they form such opposition to Israel and such passion towards a nation that's not even their own, to when they don't even realize what they're standing for. And this is why I wanted to dig into things, because when you dig into the deeper layers of Palestine and you look at who Palestine is, who's running Palestine, even though they were elected, Palestine is ran by, guess who? Hamas. Now, I'll go ahead and say this. Hamas is not a very good or nice organization. We've seen the stories. We've seen what they do to people. We see what happened. But in specific regards to Palestine versus Israel, you can very clearly see that, you know what, I'll do it this way. When it comes to Palestine versus Israel, or rather Israel versus Palestine, there can be things that are observed where, if you look past just the surface, you see that there's more going on than really what meets the eye, okay? And to really portray this message that I'm trying to press, I have a little short, it's like a 3-second video, but I just want to show it really quick and then I'll explain. So watch this video down below and pay attention. So the video that you just watched, like I said, it's a very short 3-second video, so I added a still image of it so you can process it for longer because it's very short, was an attack from Hamas in Palestine towards Israel. Now, while a lot of people paint Israel as the bad guy in this situation and paint Hamas as the victims or the people of being self-defense, I want to kind of more so bring a clear image of what's really going on, okay? So first, notice how in this video, you have someone who's fighting and launching some kind of exploding projectile, whether it's an RPG, rocket launcher, whatever it may be. You can see that they're launching this in an attack. But if you look around them, where does it look like they are? They're not in a military base, are they? No, they're covered by blankets. It almost looks like they're hidden, but really, if you think about it, what it looks like is they put up some kind of blankets that kind of hide where they are because they're in a civilian region. Again, look at the blankets. It looks like they're hiding themselves in what looks like can be perceived as a civilian region. Not only that, do you see them wearing any kind of military uniform? No. Why is that? They're dressed as civilians. So you have someone who's fighting against Israel who is dressed not only as a civilian, but is hiding themselves clearly with blankets, but also seeming to be hiding. I mean, if it's a military base, why wouldn't you be hiding behind bunkers? Why wouldn't you be hiding by some kind of strong structure? Why blankets? Unless it's a civilianized, populated area. But why be in a civilized, populated area if you're going to attack and go to war with someone? Unless you want to put your own people at risk. That sounds evil. That sounds selfish. But here's the catch. Because if you attack Israel from a civilized place and you disguise yourself to look like a civilian, then what happens when Israel responds? If Israel responds and they launch an attack back and it hits and it now affects the uninvolved people and has undesired casualties, does that not make them look like the bad guy? Paints a false story. Is that intentional? Well, how about this question? What if it doesn't hit any unfortunate casualties and they actually strike this man back? Let's say this man gets struck down in a retaliation and now they come and uncover him. What are they going to show? That they're in war with Israel, or would they just show this man who looks like a civilian who has now been taken out and still claim some kind of false story that, hey, look what Israel is doing. They're the bad guys. They're attacking our civilians. But you literally have this man dressed up as a civilian, hiding in a civilian area, covered by civilian blankets, launching attacks. And it very much so makes it so that a false picture could be painted. So to reiterate, the point I'm making is not that people present stories in the sense that, there's sometimes pieces missing or they may not know the full story themselves. The point I'm making is sometimes people intentionally lie to push the story they want you to believe so you can ally with them, so you can join them, be a part of their group, be a part of their movement, strengthen their forces, so you can be used for their motives, or in other words, so you can be their little pawn, okay? And so the reason I'm bringing this out is to bring clarity, because people who may be 100% opposed to Israel, if you really understand what's going on and look at the fuller picture, is Israel really as bad of a person? I'm not saying they didn't do anything bad whatsoever, because no nation is perfect, but are they really as much of the bad guy as you think they are? Or are you having an exaggerated mindset or perspective put in you, presented to you, and you're just accepting it? Now, if you need further proof to kind of paint this picture of needing to question things, again, we're talking about Palestine, who is ran by Hamas, and these attacks are happening by Hamas. So with that being said, I want to ask all of you if you are aware of what Hamas's foundation was based upon. So when Hamas was founded in 1988, you can look this up yourselves on Google. One of Hamas's founding statements was that they wanted to eradicate Israel, okay? So I'll go ahead and read this for you. I don't have this on the screen, but what it says is the foundation of Hamas declared that Israel will continue to arise and continue to exist until Islam wipes it out. So think about a movement, think about a body, think about a group whose sole priority is to eliminate a type of person. Again, talking about Nazis, right? Or rather talk about similarities to Nazis. But coming back to the point here, they're not talking, their foundational statement didn't list that they wanted independence from Israel. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, Israel tried to take their land, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that. And you try to get into the history. Their founding statement, you can look this up yourself, look it up, is not that they wanted independence from Israel. It's not that they wanted peace from Israel. It's not that they wanted Israel to leave them alone. No, their priority was to cause Israel to no longer exist. This is their founding statement. And then that was in 1988. Later in 2017, they released an update to it to try and water it down and make it seem not as bad, saying, oh, well, when we made this founding statement, it didn't have to do with their religious faith. It more so had to do with the Zionist project, which deals, if you look into that, deals with Israel being able to have their own land, which is the land of Israel. So for one, they said it wasn't to do anything with their faith, it's just with the Zionist project. So in other words, it's not to do, you're claiming you're not attacking them because of their faith, you're attacking them because you don't want them to have a land, for one. But why can't you just let someone have a land and then you be peaceable about it? But not getting too much into that, even if that statement is said, what's to say they're not lying? Because again, people lie. Just because they water it down and say, oh, well, we didn't really mean it this way, we just, mean it this way, doesn't mean it's 100% in the tone or meaning that they say it is. That's for one. For two, the way they clarified their statement was by saying it had nothing to do with their faith. Remember, The founding statement was that they wanted Israel to no longer exist. They said it will continue to exist until Islam wipes it out. And then their rebuttal to that, or rather their clarifying of it, was that, oh, this isn't about their faith. They didn't say, we don't really mean to wipe them out. No, they still stand their ground on wanting to wipe them out. Not wanting peace, wanting to wipe out Israel. So now you have to ask yourself, well, who really is the bad guy then? Well, we can, and I'm not trying to say anyone is 100% the bad guy, but I'm trying to get your mind to think. I want your mind to think critically, and I want you to get past talking points. I want you to get past propaganda of the Democratic Party. I want you to get past the initial statements that Republicans may say. I want you to look at the news. I want you to see what's online, and I want you to dig into things yourself and read it for yourself. And don't just read until you get a point, because a lot of talking points that are brought out are just that. They bring you to a point. No, you need to dig into it. What are we talking about here? Let's dig further in. Hamas, as was stated by their founding statement, Israel will exist until Islam wipes it out. Not until Palestine wipes it out. Islam wipes it out. So Palestine, or rather Hamas, we're speaking of Hamas, who runs Palestine. Hamas is a group that is heavily, I won't even say heavily, it is Islam based. They base themselves off the Islamic faith. Now, while I don't have, how should I say this? This may be getting into mucky water for some people, but this is a channel where I speak the truth, okay? It's not to attack anybody, any person, but I bring the truth out as it is. So to add the layers onto this, if you look into the Islamic faith, do you know what the Islamic faith pushes and encourages? Guess what? The Islamic faith, one, wants to conquer the world. So I'll say that again. The Islamic faith, the motivation of the Islamic faith is not just to live in peace. It's not just to reach clarity with their God. It's not just to have more of a spiritual enlightenment. No, one of their primary goals, the primary goals of Islam, is not even to bring Islam peacefully to others in hopes that others can see their perspective. No, one of Islam's priorities is to conquer and force people to join the Islamic faith. So much to the point to where if you don't agree with it, they, yes, will force it upon you. But on top of that, if you're already in the faith and you try to leave, they don't say, oh, well, I hope they come back to the faith. No, they end you. Look at the person who started the Islamic faith. Why am I blanking on his name? Is it Muhammad? Let me fact check myself here. Okay, yes. Sorry, I did fact check myself. I don't know why I forgot his name. But getting into the Islamic faith, as I was saying, when you look back at its history, the Islamic faith was founded by their prophet named Muhammad, who, if you look at his lifestyle and how he pushed the Islamic faith, it was not in the same way that Jesus introduced Christianity. It wasn't in the same way even other religions tried to do theirs. No, the Islamic faith through Muhammad came by being a warlord, came by conquering. A lot of what the Islamic faith is warmongering to get, or rather warring, to get other nations to submit to what their belief is. And you can even look this up yourself. And I challenge you, if you're watching this, look up videos of Islamic people saying this themselves. Very religious Islamic people admittedly admit on camera that their goal is to see to it that the entire world is Islam. And again, when you look at how Islam started, it was by warring and by conquering. So now if you look back at the founding statement of Hamas and consider the fact that they want Israel to no longer exist, not until Palestine wipes it out, no, until Islam wipes it out. So again, we're now painting a picture what really is the truth and who really is the worser of the two goods or two evils. These are the questions you have to start asking yourself. Now, I also painted a picture of how when it comes to this still image here that I guess I left up here, but that's fine. We're talking a lot about it. When you look and consider this picture, again, it paints a picture that could very easily be set up as a false story. Well, again, when you look in the Islamic faith, you know what one of the features that stand unique for Islam are? Their text, the Quran, encourages in the Islamic faith and promotes lying as long as it's for promoting Islam. You have other faiths that have a sense of morality that say, oh, well, lying isn't good, or some people may try to water it down and say, yeah, lying is bad, but it's just a little white lie, even though the Bible says, thou shalt not bear false witness. People say, oh, but it's just a little white lie, whatever. No, the Islamic faith says, no, it's okay to lie, and we want you to lie if it pushes Islam, which again, how is Islam pushed? Conquering. Look at this still image. So we're starting to see more of a full picture. This is the picture I'm trying to paint here, okay? When you have a faith that bases itself off of lying to get what it wants. As a matter of fact, even if you do a deeper dive into the Islamic faith and you look at, I believe, how their Quran describes their God, who they call Allah. When you look at how the Quran describes Allah, one of his descriptions it gives him is, it says their Allah is the greatest of all deceivers. So, and again, I'm not trying to issue any kind of direct attack towards anybody, but I want to bring information that's already known, that's out there in the public, so people can form and hold on to better opinions and better decisions. Because when you have a faith that is based off of an image or a godlike figure, an idol, whatever you want to call it, that's known and called the greatest of all deceivers, when you have a faith that encourages lying as long as it promotes Islam, when you have a faith that prioritizes spreading throughout the entire world through means of warring and conquering, and then you see evidence of it like this with a movement that stands on that religious belief known as Hamas, targeting Israel in the situation where it's painted as in this still image, with their founding statement listed as Israel will continue to arise and will continue to exist until Islam wipes it out. So again, people come into this conversation and they get all the talking points that a lot of these people that almost hate their nation bring forth and say, oh, well, you're a terrible person, a horrible person if you think if you support Israel, you don't support Palestine. They're victims and they're this and they're that, until you see pictures like this, okay? Until you start looking into who's running Palestine, until you start looking into the faith basis behind Hamas, until you start looking at the founding statements and the founding goals of Hamas. When you start putting all the pieces together, you realize that the picture really isn't quite as it was presented. Why? Because everyone dresses things up so that it's presented in the way they want it to be presented. But when you get past how people want you to see it and you see it for how it really is, then you can make more informed decisions and you can hold to better morals and standing points. You can have better opinions, or rather at least more informed opinions. But if you just take things as people present them, you will not only never get to the truth, you will be gullible, you will be a puppet used as a pawn. If you just believe these things the way people present it, you're basically their tool, and you have no solid opinion that's formed from solid logic. So you have to really move past this, and we know this. We understand the concept of not being gullible. We talk about it in a derogatory sense. Oh, you're a gullible person. You're a gullible person. We don't like when other people call us a gullible person. No, I'm not. I'm skeptical of everything, or skeptical, if I could get the word out. We're skeptical of everything. We check everything. Okay, do we? Because again, if you look in this situation here, things look a certain way. But again, this is the difference between things that are just presented out of ignorance or things that are conjured as lies so that you see it. Because if it's well formed enough and the people behind the lie are intelligent enough, boy, they can really make it look like a good story. And you would never know the truth of the lie until you put in the work and the effort. You think people are really gonna take time to read through the Quran and try to figure out what your faith is to kind of see this stuff? Thankfully, we live in a world today where we have the technology that we do, where we can just simply go on the internet and we can see this stuff. We are blessed to be in the age that we are. But that being said, still, when they're intellectual enough, look at all the people that, whether in politics or in other conversations, are grown people, should have a lot, I'll say, more well-rounded opinions oftentimes find themselves just following a point because it was their political affiliation, because it aligns with their bias, because it's this aspect, or because it's that aspect, or because it's their friend, or this or that. And people don't realize how gullible they are until they start digging into things. But you have to dig into it. The more you take things just as it's presented, the more brainwashed and of a mindless puppet you are going to be. So I say this with love, but in all sincerity. Take your time and do your due diligence to investigate the stories. Don't just be so quick to form such passionate, strong opinions unless you feel you have a very good, grounded sense of the background information. And even then, have a sense of humility to acknowledge, well, this is what looks like is the best case scenario. Could be right, could be wrong. But see, when you come from that sense of integrity, not only do you not follow gullibly whatever people say, you also acknowledge that you only have the information as you could find it. So please do your due diligence. Take your time. When you receive news, don't just receive it as people present it. Take it and dig into it, or else you'll never know the truth of the story. So that's where I leave you guys with this video. I thank you all for tuning in, but that'll be it for this one. So as always, I love you all. God bless, and we'll see you next time.